Welcome everyone, and thanks for attending part 3 of our mini class in DISC Behavioral Profiling, Motivators, and Sales Skills Index instruments to help ensure that you get the right people in the right seats on the bus doing things right. My name is Erick Simpson, and I'm the Chief Strategist at ericksimpson.com. I'm also the creator of the MSP Mastered methodology, and welcome to spending time working on the business with me rather than in the business. Now, as I mentioned, this is part 3 of our 3-part mini class series. In part 1, we discussed what DISC is, DISC behavioral profiling, and how it's used not only during the hiring process, but also in team building and in building high performance teams by identifying observable human behavior and adapting our behavior in order to communicate better with and influence others with that understanding of how they behave, how they receive communication best, and how they respond to that type of communication. In part 2 of our 3-part series, we discussed another instrument in the DISC family of assessments, and that instrument is called the Motivators Assessment. Now, while DISC behavioral assessments tell us how a person behaves, the Motivators Assessment tells us what drives them to behave that way, what motivates them to behave that way, and the different factors that influence someone's behavior. With that understanding, we are then able to create incentive, rewards, and compensation programs and other activities and benefits that will enable us to better influence someone to exceed expectations and to succeed in their position. So having the understanding of how someone behaves and what drives them to behave this way really helps us identify characteristics within our teams to help us really develop them and motivate them into high-performing teams over time. All right, so while the DISC behavioral profile does not measure our intuition, or the motivators assessments, they don't measure intuition, education, experience, training, expertise, any of that, just observable human behavior. The Sales Skills Index, which is today's focus, does measure a person's understanding of the 7-step sales process. So while we normally apply DISC behavioral assessments and motivators assessments to every member of our team, especially during the hiring process and during team building and high performance exercises, the Sales Skills Index is reserved only for those folks that are responsible for any portion of the sales process. Now, this includes sales professionals, account managers, sales admins, even potentially even some marketing team members, and as well as sales engineers or engineers that participate in the sales process. Why would we include engineers and sales engineers? Because if you think about it, a sales engineer's role, their only role in the sales process, is to help accelerate sales velocity and shorten sales cycles. So the better they understand the 7-step sales process and the better they are selling as a team with their sales professional or account manager, the better success and higher outcomes they will realize through that understanding. So we also want to make certain that we're training our sales engineers, or any engineer that happens to be tapped on the shoulder, to wear the sales engineer's hat for any period of time. Okay, so we really want to understand what they know about the 7-step sales process. So again, different from the DISC behavioral assessment and the Motivators Assessment, the Sales Skills Index tells us how well an individual understands the 7-step sales process. And why is that important? Because during the sales hiring process, it answers the question, how long will it take to train this sales professional? It's really, really important, because understanding that can help us make the decision whether to bring someone on or not to bring someone on, based upon the amount of time, energy, and effort we have available to train that individual to be successful. And my definition of sales success includes several factors. How quickly can they pay for themselves based upon their sales? And how quickly can they generate 4.5 times their W-2 compensation in gross profit sales, right? Now, if you don't commission your sales professionals against gross profit and instead on top line revenue, then I'm looking for more like 10 to 12 times their take home pay, their W-2 at the end of the year. They generate 10 to 12 times that in top line revenue sales. So easy math, if they take home $100,000 a year and you're commissioning them on top line revenue, they've got to generate 1.2 to 1.4 million in top line sales for the formula to make sense. Now, these are industry statistics and industry standards, of what we're looking for in terms of a return on our sales professionals, okay? And if we're basing our comp plan against GP, I'm looking for 4.5 times their W-2 in gross profit compensation. So again, if they're taking home $100,000 a year, I need $450,000 in gross profit sales from them in order for the numbers to make sense. Those are our targets, and those are minimum sales targets. Okay, I've worked with many sales professionals that exceed that by far. I've worked with sales professionals that do 10 times their W-2 in GP sales. So again, how much time do you have to spend with these sales professionals to get them to become high-performing sales professionals? So the Sales Skills Index is a measurement tool on that factor, the person's knowledge of what to do and what not to do during the sales engagement. Now, I will say this, the Sales Skills Index is not the final decision maker. Again, it's up to you how you make your decisions and who you hire and what you expect from them in terms of performance and in terms of quota attainment and in terms of ROI. You may have someone that's wearing multiple hats, whose core responsibility is not sales. So again, having them take a sales skills index, you would not expect them to score as highly on the sales skills index as a seasoned sales professional. Okay, so your mileage may vary. So no sales discussion about someone's knowledge of the 7-step sales process would be fair without identifying each of those steps of the sales process. So we start off with prospecting and preparation. This is typically your lead generation activities where you're identifying potential prospects who may be good targets for you to engage with to set appointments to present your products and services to. This first phase includes everything up to the point of setting that first sales appointment. So I'm going to, however it is that you generate your lead list, if you've got a list of prospects that you've been marketing to forever, that's a good start. If you're looking for new contact information, you may be acquiring lists from different list brokers. One of my favorite ways to generate qualified, marketing qualified leads today are through LinkedIn, using tools like Sales Navigator, where I can filter very precisely the geographic region I want to target, the title of the person, that I want to engage with, the size of the organization from an employee perspective, and other variables that, the industry that they're in, et cetera, that now I can build a targeted list of prospects that I'd like to do business with right through LinkedIn. I can reach out to them and connect with them through LinkedIn and then start a warm relationship. And what I found is prospects will respond to LinkedIn messaging much more readily than they'll respond to cold email marketing or even emails from you that you're sending directly from your email platform. It's a different prioritization, I think, subconsciously, because, number one, they're probably getting tons and tons and tons of, unsolicited email in their inboxes. So, they've put into place, anti-spam filters and junk mail filters and things like that. So first, it's a crapshoot if we even get into their inbox. And then they may look at the email and just delete it because, again, we have no relationship with them. But through LinkedIn, they're probably not getting a lot of direct messages through LinkedIn. They may be getting a lot of, requests to engage. But again, if they're a small or medium business owner, they're probably not getting a lot of traction or requests in LinkedIn. So when you reach out to them and it's not a marketing or a sales message. It's, hey, I respect you in the industry. I also have experience in this industry, and I'd like to connect and maybe compare notes. Something very benign that will allow them to connect with you. That then allows you to communicate with them directly as a first connection. And at that point, you can just ask their opinion on a couple of different things and build a little bit of a warm relationship that way, and then finally ask for the opportunity to stop by. Right. And I like, a quick stop by, a quick chat, using those techniques that don't reflect, a lot of weight behind them. The more we build something up, the more that the prospect will build it up. So if we want to, schedule a conference call, that seems a lot more weighty than, hey, do you have a few minutes for a quick chat? I'd like to introduce myself. Or, schedule a meeting at your offices. Hey, would it be okay if I stop by and introduce myself? I'll be in the area next Wednesday. Will you be around? Right? So there's different ways that you can, execute this prospecting and preparation phase very, very effectively. And then before that first meeting, what you're doing is you're researching, right? So you've got LinkedIn. That's a great start. But what else is available to you to prepare you to engage with this prospect? The entire World Wide Web, right? So I call that web qualifying someone. So I want to get to someone's website. I want to identify every piece of information or news that I can about that organization, their vertical market, their customer focus, the products and services they offer, any news about the leadership, the founders. Many companies have, pages about the leadership and things like that. And I'm just going to look for any press releases, et cetera, to really arm myself with the information. That's the preparation part, right? So that's really phase one, getting prepared. So you set the appointment. Now, phase two of the 7-step sales process is the sales warm-up. This is when you meet with the client and you're sitting down with them. Finally, you've secured that appointment and you're breaking the ice and you're talking about everything except the potential sale to come with the client to get them to relax. You're using the information that you gleaned from your prospecting and preparation phase. You're going to talk to them about newsworthy events, about, you're going to ask the business owner personal questions about themselves, not about the business, but it's okay to ask things like, how did you start your business? What drove you to start this business? There are a whole bunch of warm-up questions that you should prepare and practice in order to get someone to, again, just kind of relax and build a little bit of a rapport with. When I train sales professionals, I like to take them through an exercise that's really similar to, what I imagine would be, FBI training at Quantico, where, you're shown a picture of a room with people in it for, 5 seconds and the picture's turned over, and then you have to describe everything that you saw in that picture and describe everyone in that picture and how the place was laid out and everything. I train these salespersons to walk in on that first appointment and scan the environment, scan the room, and identify things like sports memorabilia, pictures, mementos, photos on the wall, to really gather a sense for, who this person is. They may have pictures of their family on a sailboat or on a boat cruise, or, camping or whatever. They may have, sports memorabilias and footballs or baseballs or things like that. So it immediately adds to your repertoire, if you will, of topics to discuss. Oh, hey, I see, you and is that your family on a cruise? Did you take a cruise recently? Oh, wow, that's really interesting. Where'd you go? The point here is to get them speaking 80% of the time and you just listening 20% of the time, until you get to the point where it is a natural point in the conversation that you can transition to step 3 of the 7-step sales process, which is sales qualifying. And you transition very easily by asking a simple question. Would it be okay if I asked you a few specific questions about your business, right? So now the sales qualifying process contains its own series of steps and phases. The types of questions that you ask, how well you position each question, how you build a sense of urgency during the qualifying process, right? By asking implication questions. So what's, you ask for, you identify the immediate pain, also the latent needs that the client may not be thinking about, and try to raise the importance of those latent needs as high as possible, so they also become things that the client thinks, wow, yeah, we should take care of that too. And then you ask implication questions, which mean questions that inquire, what's the worst thing that can happen if you didn't resolve this issue today? So, great topics are security, mobility, security being the number one concern of small, medium business today. That's a great way to start, qualifying someone for pain. Unless you know exactly what they've, brought you in to talk about, it may be they need a VoIP system or BDR or an infrastructure upgrade or a move, right? But when you sit down with them, you want to qualify them for everything else that you offer all of your products and services, just so that this is, the very first engagement with them. I want you to start thinking down the road. What am I going to approach them with after this project, after the next project, right? 3 or 4 chess moves down the road, you have an idea of all of the things that are potential ways that you can help that business owner achieve their business goals through the use of technology delivered by you, right? So the next step of the sales process is the sales presentation. Now we're skipping over, doing the technical assessment or security assessment and scanning the environment and pricing and putting the proposal together and the quote and all that good stuff. But it's how well you present your solution, how well you tie together the information that you've gathered in the previous meetings to build a compelling sales presentation that, again, accelerates sales velocity and shortens sales cycles. So after the sales presentation, the 5th step of the sales process is overcoming any sales objections the client might have. Now, if you've done a really good job of warming the client up, building that rapport, qualifying them not only for your solutions, but also for budget, remembering to ask the budget question and how, and how you navigate that so you have an idea of the kind of budget that you're potentially working with. And, some clients may have no idea what kind of budget they may be able to put together. And I always ask that question that way. What kind of a budget can you put together? What kind of a budget number can you find for us to deal with these, important issues? Sometimes they have no idea. Sometimes they have a little, well, I've got this much, socked away over here, but no client just has budget waiting around for you to come in and sell them your stuff. Trust me, right? But if you can get them to at least, fess up that they have no idea, then you can say something like, well, for clients that we've worked with in your particular situation, we typically have been able to solve these problems for a range of between X and Y. Now, this is very tricky, right? You don't want to paint yourself into a corner. I always say, don't hold me to that, because I don't know what I don't know yet before doing, discovery and assessments and things like that. But, is something in that range a budget? Is there a budget in that range that you think you can find to help us move forward and address these critical issues for you? And either they'll say yes or no, or they'll give you, a counter to that. At least you know where you stand now. So when you develop your proposal, you want to make sure that your first option, and I always recommend putting 3 options in the proposal, your first option is exactly within that budget. So that kind of overcomes the, budget objection later, right? So anyway, the fifth step, you're asking for the business, and you're overcoming any objections that the client may have. And there's a process for overcoming objections. You identify the objection, you qualify the objection, you answer the question, and you move past it, right? Once you can overcome those objections, then the 6th step of the sales process is closing the sale. This is actually asking for the business, and there's a process for share. Many sales professionals wait for the client to close themselves during the sales process. They think, well, I presented everything. Now I'm just going to shut up and hope that they, make the buying decision. Well, you've got to ask for the business. You've got to let the client know that you want their business, that you want to work with them, that you want to solve these problems for them. And you need to let them know that. So, Mr. or Mrs. Client, if you have no other further questions or feedback, I'd like to ask you for your business. It's as simple as that. When can we get started, right? And then that's when you be quiet, and then let them speak first, right? And then you'll know whether there's another hidden objection in there that they haven't offered or whatnot. But usually, if you're executing all of these steps correctly, you're going to close a ton more business. Now, closing the sale isn't the final step of the sales process. It's the 6th step of the sales process. The final step is after the sale is closed. It is the sales follow-up. This is when you, go visit the client during the, the phase of onboard. Maybe you're onboarding them for your new services. Maybe there's a project deployment going on. You're going to show up and you're going to, warm up the client again, right? Remember, warm up every single time you meet with a client, even when you're talking to them on the phone. Just kind of shoot the breeze with them, get them to relax, get them to remember that relationship that you've built with them. And then transition to, well, looks like everything is going smoothly here. The sales follow-up step is meant for you to identify additional sales opportunities and referrals, okay? Imagine if you did that for every new client you sold something new to. You came back and asked them and talked about the next thing. I'd like to schedule some time with you after we get this project implemented to come back and talk to you about X. X being the next product, service, or solution that you noted down during your sales qualifying that was a need for the client, but this had a higher priority. And also, I'd like to ask for 3 or 4 referrals from you. This is the best time to ask for referrals from a new client. The project is in motion. This might sound bad, but you haven't yet had the opportunity to quote unquote screw anything up yet, right? And I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but you know what I mean. There's a honeymoon period in there where everything just seems to be, moving forward, right? And you haven't had any hiccups yet. So this is the best time to ask for, and I say 3 or 4 referrals because you're lucky to come back with 1 or 2, right? Always ask for a couple more. Do you know anyone else that we may be able to help with our products and services, just like we're helping you? Okay. When someone takes the sales skills index, they're asked a series of questions that attempt to, it's scenario driven. So you're given a scenario and you're asked, what is the correct answer? What is the correct next step in this scenario? And what the Sales Skills Index does is it scores how many times you chose the correct answer, how many times you chose the second best answer, right? And then it also scores you on your knowledge of what not to do in that specific situation. So as you can see on this slide, it breaks down different steps in the sales process, prospecting and qualifying. In this particular scenario, it says 54% and then most effective strategy as your first choice. First impression, greeting. Strategy, 33% of the time you rank the second most effective strategy as your choice. And then later on, it gives you the breakdown of what the correct answer should have been for these things. So you now learn from this as well. Qualifying questions. 29% of the time you chose the most effective strategy. 14% of the time you ranked the second most effective strategy as your first choice. Demonstration, right? So this is the sales presentation phase. So they, the words they use are slightly different, but they mean the same thing. You know what they mean. So during the presentation phase or demonstration phase, 56% of the time, you chose the most effective strategy. 44%, you chose the second most effective strategy as your first choice. Influence. 17% of the time you chose the most effective. 17% of the time you chose the second most effective. Closing. This is the tough one here. 50% of the time you chose the most effective strategy. Well, we got some work to do, right? 10%, the second most effective. And then general overall understanding of the sales process. This particular candidate only chose the most effective strategy 31% of the time, and 39% of the time they ranked the second most effective strategy as their first choice. So I'm going to tie all this together and show you how these percentages indicate how long it will take to train this person to choose the correct strategies. And not only to understand what the next correct strategy is, but actually how to execute it and how to perform it until it becomes subconscious, right? Can do it in your sleep. These are the traits of highly performing, super successful sales professionals. 90% of the time, they know the most effective strategy every single time, and they execute it. So the next analysis in the Sales Skills Index, after the person has taken the instrument and completed it, it breaks down and it analyzes how they answered the questions, right? So again, it's a summary at the top. It says your question analysis. 28 times you chose the most effective strategy. 20 times you chose the second most effective strategy as number one. 9 times you chose the third. And 10 times you chose the least effective strategy. So the odds are stacked against this potential prospect. So let's inform them of what they should have chosen as an answer to each of these questions. So for instance, here's a scenario number 8. Question number 8, you approach your prospect and discover the person you are seeing is not in a position to make any type of buying decision. The correct answer is you should A, continue to sell in order to develop an internal advocate. So now you're trying to they're not the right person to make the decision. The right person isn't available. You want to, now you're there, you don't want to waste that time. You try to develop internal advocacy from that person. So the next time that you come by or call, they're, more willing to help you and advocate for the business owner on your behalf. Question 33, competition forces salespeople to, the best answer is D, better understand their product, the competition, and the need to improve their sales abilities. Now remember, you're faced with a series of multiple choice questions. This particular individual 48 times chose the most or second most effective strategy as number one, but 19 times chose the third or least effective strategy as number one. And here are these examples here. Question 34, the more competition a product has, the more a salesperson needs to the correct answer would be C, master selling skills. And this goes on. So this is a breakdown of the way that the individual answered the questions and then teaches you what the correct question or the correct answer or action should be. So there's 3 specific pages in the Sales Skills Index instrument that rate your performance against top sales performers. Now these are tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of sales professionals all over the world that have taken this instrument. So it's rating you based upon the top, okay? Say the top sales performer in light gray. So this rates the most effective, choosing the most effective sales strategy in each of these sales steps or phases. So prospecting, our applicant did very well. They actually beat top sales performers in the prospecting analysis, which is great. But in first impression, qualifying, demonstration, influence, close, and general, they underperformed against top sales performers. And as you can see at the bottom, I've circled in red their score on the understanding of the most effective sales strategy in every situation. It's 40 compared to top sales performers, 56. So definitely have a lot of work to do, in these areas for understanding the most effective sales strategy. Now, the second ranking is the primary and secondary. Remember, our applicant chose a portion of the time they chose the most correct answer, and a portion of the time they chose the second most correct answer. So this gives us a little bit of a different analysis here. So in prospecting, they scored the first and or second choice as being the correct choice, 92 over our top sales performer, 70. They underperformed in first impression and qualifying, but in demonstration they actually exceeded our top sales performers, which means that they chose the second most appropriate answer more times than they chose the first most appropriate answer. Still not the correct answer, but not completely wrong. We're getting close, right? So again, the way that we analyze this really provides value in helping us fine-tune the effectiveness of our sales staff, our sales team. Influence, we underperformed 33 to 82. Close, we underperformed 60 to 87. General, we underperformed, but hey, we're closing the gap here, right? The first or second. But again, there can be only one right answer. For you Highlander fans, there can be only one correct answer. I hope some of you got that. I'm aging myself here. So the total, as compared to our top sales performers, our applicants scored a 68 out of 78. In their understanding of the most and second most effective sales strategies. Now, understanding what not to do in a sales situation is as important, or maybe more important, than understanding what to do. We certainly don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot or put our foot in our mouth and do things completely incorrectly, from the get-go. So this particular ranking shows how our applicant did in knowing what not to do in a sales engagement. Unfortunately for our applicant, it's still not looking great, right? So in prospecting, which is their strongest point, which is great, they exceeded expectations, 62 to 55. But in every other sales step and phase, they underperformed consistently, ending up with a total of 44 against our top sales performers of 55. So what does all this mean? How do we score this and get data from it, and that tells us, is this a worthy investment for us to either bring this sales professional on the team, or more importantly, for those of you that have sales professionals or folks that are selling to clients and have never had this done, this instrument, to have them take this and immediately identify the areas where they need help and then train them on how to improve in each of these areas. It will dramatically move the needle for you in sales outcomes. I promise you, I've done this for hundreds of organizations. I've trained probably thousands of salespeople, and understand that if we are not able to understand where they're being challenged and just know that their sales closing percentage is less than we expect, we have to be able to understand what areas they need help with. Not everyone needs help in every single area like this particular applicant. Most folks, do a really good job in some areas and have one or two areas where they need a little bit more polish, and it makes a tremendous amount of difference for them. So how do we score the SSI? Well, remember those scores that I had circled in red on those 3 other pages? Those are the scores that we add up to get our total score. And so our applicant ended up with a total score of 152. Now, unfortunately, that means that they are an untrained salesperson in my analysis, okay? This means that someone with that low of a score basically knows nothing about sales. So just understand that. And how do you take someone that knows nothing about sales and get them to a point where they are producing? And this means that they are paying for themselves in my in my definition, okay? Not that they're doing 4.5 times, their W-2 in GP, or 10 or 12 times their W-2 in top line revenue. No, this means that they are paying for themselves. So it may take you 9 months or more to train this person to pay for themselves, and they may not be getting to that multiple of W-2, but they're selling and they're paying for themselves. Okay. Now again, your mileage may vary. You may have somebody that's just super quick on the draw and jumps in there and can do it in 6 months. Great, my hat's off to you. But just understand that a person scoring 159 or less is going to take you the longest to train. Someone that scores between 160 to 169, I consider them a salesperson, but they've probably got 3 or 4 areas that need special attention. It may take 6 months or so to get them to the point where they're definitely ramping up and moving towards that multiple of sales against their W-2. Someone with 170 to 179 is an experienced salesperson. Maybe and if you're hiring someone new that doesn't know you, that 3 months may be more of them understanding your products and services and your processes and how you price and bundle and all of the mechanics of sales, right? And feature and benefit of the things that you sell. Now, someone with 180 to 199, they're a trained sales professional. They've sold before. They just really need to understand, what gaps they may have in need to understand. Trained sales professional. It's going to take them 30 days. They just need to understand, what it is that they're being asked to sell, and what your sales process looks like. This is somebody that can, you're successful at selling one thing. The sales process and sales training is transferable to different things as long as you understand the industry, the target audience, the benefits of the product, service, or solution that you're presenting to them, and how it's going to improve the business outcomes of your target buyer, okay? So this is where the rubber meets the road, and this is the value of utilizing an SSI or a sales skills index in building your organization. So if you'd like to chat more about DISC behavioral profiling, motivators, or the Sales Skills Index, I'm a certified DISC behavioral analyst and motivators analyst, and I apply these instruments in every single engagement that I work with my clients on to help make sure that we're getting the right people in the right seats on the bus doing things right. And then working with the existing team that's on the bus and doing team building so that we create high performing teams, and especially sales teams. So go ahead and reach out to me, Erick at ericksimpson.com, and I'd be happy to take a call with you and discuss how I can help you develop and create high performing teams. Thanks very much, everyone.